Parenting triggers prevent us from being the parent we want to be, at least at that moment. They rob us of our choice. They cause us to act in a way that eases our own emotional discomfort, instead of in the way that is best for our child at the moment. That's because these responses are usually the result of experiences from our own childhoods. What do parenting triggers look like? We all have different triggers, but our children experiencing big emotions is a huge trigger for many parents. Often, we were raised in an environment where we were not free to express our own emotions safely. Because doing so would have led to us being punished, ignored, or otherwise invalidated. So when our own children express emotions, we feel threatened and overwhelmed by them. Or, we simply don't know how to deal with them, because no one ever modeled this behavior for us as children. It is not always negative emotions from our children that trigger us either. Sometimes it is our children's happiness that does it, things like playfulness, acting silly, or having choice and autonomy in their lives. If we were never allowed to experience these things as children, if these behaviors resulted in us being shamed or punished, then this kind of behavior in our children has the potential to trigger us also. Some of the more common parenting triggers include children not listening, sibling arguments, food waste, children talking back, whining, silliness, tantrums and big emotions, a lack of privacy or personal space. So if any of those things sound familiar, you're definitely not alone. And you're also not failing. Here's what you really need to know about parenting triggers if you want to make some changes to the way you respond to your kids. Here are 3 things you need to know in order to parent mindfully while triggered. First, know that our child's behavior has nothing to do with your yelling. When our children behave in challenging ways, we often lose our cool. We yell. We lash out at our kids. We punish them. We say things we regret. These situations cause us to feel frustrated, angry, and helpless. Overwhelmed. Anxious. Scared. Negative thinking sets in. Things like, no one ever listens to me. I'm failing as a parent. No one appreciates me. I'm useless. Why? Because triggers activate old wounds from childhood. Old hurts and beliefs we have carried with us into adulthood. They take us right back to that moment in time when we felt abandoned, rejected, or unheard as a child. They cause us to relive that pain. And then we react in ways that aim to protect us from being hurt again. When you are triggered, you are no longer in the present. You are reacting to past events. And that is why you yell. The second thing to remember is that your stress is making it impossible to control your reactions. The other thing that is important for us to understand about triggers is that they are more likely to be activated when we are already feeling emotionally heightened or physically depleted. So if we have had an argument with our partner earlier in the day, or we're stressed about a work deadline, or we're hungry, or we haven't had enough sleep, those triggers are more easily brought to the surface. We are not able to think clearly when we are stressed. When the fight-flight-freeze response kicks in, our thinking brain shuts down. Logical thinking goes out the window. And so does our self-control. Because we need our thinking brain to access our self-control. That means, the more stress you are under, the less able you are to control your reactions. This is why it is so very important to learn how to mindfully manage our stress as parents. It is important for us, and our own emotional health, of course, but it is also important for the emotional health of our kids. When we are feeling emotionally and physically well, that threshold for feeling triggered is raised, it takes much more to trigger us. We are better able to regulate ourselves, and therefore, help our kids regulate themselves. And last, but not least, you are not your reactions. The final thing we tend to do when we find ourselves triggered assumes that our reaction is some character or personality flaw. That these reactions are simply a part of who we are. So many people tell me things like, I'm a yeller. I've never had much patience. I'm not a very calm person. When we think like this about ourselves, 2 things happen. We feel powerless to change, and we feel shame about our behavior. And both of these things increase our stress and make it less likely that we will be able to respond differently. We get stuck in a shame cycle, repeatedly being triggered, yelling, feeling bad, and then yelling some more because we feel bad. Your reactions are not who you are. They are not happening because you're a bad person or a bad parent. They are simply stressed responses and patterns that you have learned when you were a child. They are a response to your parents' conditioning that you are unknowingly passing to your children. And yes, now is the time to change. The brain can be reprogrammed. You can choose a different response. This is possible once you become aware of your own inner child's wounds and learn how to release them. And once you accept that, the real change can begin. Join our course on becoming a conscious parent and let us take you on a journey to establish a nurturing connection between you and your child.